Welcome to the Soft Life with Sadie Baddies. Sadie Baddies is the antidote to mental health stigma, and this podcast is hosted by yours truly, Priscilla O. Adjaman. We are a virtual sanctuary centering Black and multiracial people, and we prioritize the mental and emotional nourishment that is the foundation of collective healing in our communities. Thank you for being here. Welcome back, baddies. Welcome back to the Soft Life podcast hosted by yours truly, Priscilla Poku Adjaman. So I am going to do a quick recap of last week's episode, which was all about finding your way back to yourself and coming home to yourself. And that episode is really inspired by the feeling of being disconnected, the feeling of being disembodied. And now we have the space to talk about that through this episode. A lot of people really resonated with it because some of y'all have been saying that ever since 2024 started, you have not been feeling like yourself. You just feel like a ghost or a shadow of yourself. So this episode was really designed and catered to all of you who might be feeling the same. I know I've gone through many of these emotions of feeling disconnected. So you're not alone. And I really hope that that episode encourages you and also makes you feel seen. So check that one out if you haven't already. As mentioned, we are back with weekly episodes. So if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel where this will be streaming, definitely subscribe and make sure that you leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple if that's where you're listening as well. So, baddies, today we're going to be talking about one of the topics that I have had saved for a while, and it's all about being a girl's girl. And what does that actually mean? We're going to be talking about building female friendships in adulthood and how being a girl's girl can help to guide and even heal some of your friendship trauma if you have experienced that before. We have done an episode on friendship trauma and creating new friendships as an adult, but this week's episode is specifically for the girls, okay? So let's start off. What does it truly mean to be a girl's girl? There's a lot of different definitions of what a girl's girl is. I mean, a simple TikTok search or YouTube search will give you a bunch of different answers. But in my opinion, being a girl's girl is all about appreciating and valuing adulthood, womanhood, and sisterhood. I have kind of a list of what I think being a girl's girl is because not only do I consider myself a girl's girl, I also have friendships with other women who are also girls and understand and appreciate the value of female friendships because they are so healing. And when you do find a good sister, even if it's just one, I promise you your life will change for the better. So to me, being a girl's girl really includes a list of different qualities and traits and as well as practices. And one of the main things that I look for in another person who is a girl's girl is holding each other accountable. So being a girl's girl means that you can be honest with your friends, you can be real, transparent, vulnerable, and hold each other accountable, even sometimes when they don't want to hear it. It's not about just giving your friend shallow advice or saying, yeah, girl, like you're right, you're always in the right. Sometimes we got to check each other and sometimes we have to hold each other accountable. So to me, being a girl's girl means that you are able to hold yourself and your friends and hold each other accountable in love. Another theme of being a girl's girl is celebrating each other's wins, no matter how big or small. So this is one of the main components of being a girl's girl. If you are a woman who loves to celebrate others' wins, their accomplishments, you know how to make a big deal out of even the most seemingly simple or even mundane things and accomplishments. And that truly is just celebrating, being in the space of other women. And I really think that this is a huge component because sometimes when we feel overlooked in our friendships or in our relationships, we can feel like maybe there is, a silent competition going, which we'll get into later. But truly being a girl's girl and celebrating each other's wins allows you to take up space. It allows you to be free. It allows you to be able to give yourself your flowers. And sometimes when we're not around women who are girls, we feel like we have to shrink ourselves and we have to make ourselves small because we don't want to step on someone's toes or we don't want to take up too much space. But when you're a girl and you have other women who are also girls, they're going to big you up. They're going to be your biggest hype man, their biggest cheerleaders. And it's just a beautiful feeling and experience when you do have that. Another element of being a girl is having uncomfortable conversations that are wrapped with love and tenderness. So, one component about being a girl is allowing yourself to have those uncomfortable conversations. This also kind of ties into holding each other accountable sometimes, but specifically when it comes to hard conversations, when you are a girl, you are always going to consider each other's feelings at the end of the day, right? So if you have someone in your group who's a saddy baddie like myself, or you have someone who's a little more sensitive, you can still deliver very honest and direct conversations, but wrap it with love, wrap it with the consideration of that person's feelings, right? So when you are able to have a hard conversation about maybe this person in your life or one of your girlfriends has, they're struggling with something internally, it could be maybe it's a substance problem. Maybe it's a toxic relationship that they're trying to get out of. Maybe it's something that they've done to you and they have never acknowledged, right? So there are some scenarios where it can be uncomfortable to talk to your friends directly and be really open and honest. But when you are a girl, you're always going to consider each other's feelings at the end of the day. And you're going to make sure that even your hard conversations are wrapped with love and care. And this is one of the biggest components of being a girl, in my opinion. The next one is prioritizing the relationships that you have with other women and honoring each other's evolutions. I am a firm believer that the women that are in your life from the hard times or the different moments in your life, they are able to nurture and allow you to grow with that friendship or that sisterhood, right? So when you are evolving with each other, it's because you value and you honor each other's roles in your life. So seeing your friends become mothers, become wives, become fiancés, business owners, switch careers, move across the country, and still looking at them with those same kind eyes that you had when they were right next to you, or maybe when you were in college and sharing a dorm room together, right? So there's so many ways to keep each other involved in your natural evolution. I'm a firm believer that these big milestones and these big life changes should also create space for your friendships to evolve, right? So maybe you're someone who just had a baby and your girlfriends are hitting you up less, or they're just like, oh, she's busy, she's a mom, which very well might be true. That doesn't mean that they don't want to see you grow, or that doesn't mean that you don't want them to grow with you and be a part of your child's life or create this new kind of experience where you are still supported and feeling loved and cared for by your girlfriends, right? So I think having women in your life who can grow with you despite whatever changes and evolutions you have, that is the true definition and essence of being a girl's girl. I'm going to take a little sip. So, one more element about being a girl's girl that is often overlooked is also celebrating and having friendships that stand the test of time, right? So we mentioned, having the evolutions of, the different titles or the different changes you have in your life, but having girlfriends that will be able to welcome you back with open arms. Maybe you've had a lapse in judgment and you kind of like fell off the grid a little bit, or maybe you are someone who just had a situation where you were not as available to your girlfriends, and then you realize like, hey, I actually really need these women in my life. These are the women who truly care about me and love me and want to nurture me. And having a girlfriend who can see you at your worst, but also want to be there for you when you are, in the space of receiving and wanting to be a part of that friendship and show up is so beautiful. Because let's be honest, sometimes we go through things and we isolate ourselves. Sometimes we go through things and we might be ashamed. Sometimes we go through things and we don't know how to show up. But when you have women in your life who can stand the test of time and be there to support you and guide you, that means everything. And I feel very blessed to have different types of female friendships in my life. I'm somebody that does have sisters. So I do have two sisters. I'm the middle child. The middle daughter. Shout out to the middle child gang. But I have two sisters. Growing up, I was kind of immersed in sisterhood and girlhood and playing, dolls with my sister, but also like making up dance choreography with my cousins on the weekend and running around and climbing trees with all my friends and my cousins and my sisters. Like, I was just surrounded by girlhood all the time, and it was just a big part of my um upbringing. So I will say that female friendships do kind of come naturally to me, because I do think having sisters makes you a little bit more open to having female friendships, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you have sisters, or you have another sibling in your life where you don't feel that close to them, or you don't feel that connection. And sometimes that can prevent us from wanting to seek out other female friendships. But I definitely am grateful for the women in my life who have shown up for me, who I've learned so much from, and I can just truly be myself around without having to perform. Now, we are going to talk about some of the other elements of being a girl's girl and what they are not. So, being a girl's girl is not being a yes woman. Being a girl's girl is not just about having the woman in your life or your girlfriends just say, yes, of course, you're always right. Or, yes, of course, do this. Yes, of course, do that. Or when you're crying out for help, them not being able to see you because they just want to make sure that you're happy, or they don't want to disappoint you, or they don't want to hold you accountable, right? That's not being a girl's girl. That is actually just being complacent in your friendships. And that's also condoning behavior that could be actually self-destructive to the woman and the people in your life. So I definitely think that being a yes woman can kind of be perceived as sometimes you are very agreeable, or you get along, or it's sometimes it can be a little bit hard to catch. But I definitely think holding your friends accountable, being honest with them, telling them when they're tripping, telling them, hey, that was messed up of you. One thing that being a girl's girl is not is being a yes woman. Just saying yes to your friend and agreeing with them on everything and just co-signing everything just because they're your girl, and never actually being honest and checking them or letting them know when they're actually in the wrong or when they are tripping. There is an element of honesty that's required in order to have healthy female friendships. And being a girl's girl is not about being a yes woman or co-signing toxic behavior just because that's your friend, right? If they're your friend, you actually want to hold them accountable and make sure that you are able to have a space where you're honest and open with them, not just because it's what they want to hear. One of the biggest components of being a girl's girl, and one thing that being a girl's girl is not, is making talking shit about other women a hobby. If your entire goal for your hangout or meeting up in person with one of your friends is to pull down other women, to disrespect them, to talk shit about them, to tear them down. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It could be from, just pulling up their Instagram and going through and criticizing them one by one. Or it could be something else that maybe you just have this animosity towards someone. Being a girl's girl is not about tearing other women down. And listen, I love a good kiki session just like any other girl. I would be lying to you if I don't have those kiki sessions with me, my girlfriends, or there's not like a text that's like, "Ooh, girl, did you see this?" Of course. That is one of the best and most sacred parts of girlhood and being a girl's girl. However, if you are spending your entire time talking shit about other women, bringing them down, talking negatively about them, what does that really say about you? Because if you are constantly projecting negativity towards other women because it's comforting, it makes you feel good, you really have to sit back and evaluate what do you have in common with that person? What do you have in common with someone who wants to spend their free time instead of nurturing their relationship or improving themselves or doing something fun together or creating memories together, you would rather sit and tear down other women. And I think that's so lame, honestly, but truly being a girl's girl is not about tearing down other women. So if you find that that's something that you're repeatedly experiencing or repeatedly involving yourself in, maybe it's time to take a step back and do some self-reflection and make sure that that's not becoming a hobby for you. Another thing that is not synonymous with being a girl's girl is being extremely jealous, competitive, or envious of other women. If your first response to good news of somebody that you see online, especially if they're a woman, is to tear them down or try to figure out like, okay, well, why does she have all of this? Or why is she posting herself on vacation again, etc. Having that attitude towards other women that they don't deserve certain things or that they are not deserving or they don't need to have whatever life experience that they're sharing with you directly or indirectly, that's not being a girl's girl, right? It's really about having eyes on your own paper, but also celebrating. This goes back to celebrating other women and being happy for them, right? I'm somebody that if I like your picture on Instagram, I'm going to like it. I'm going to like your stories. I'm going to comment on your stuff. Like that is what social media is for. And so beyond that, if you are the type of person that sees someone who is sharing something positive or an accomplishment and you see that shit online and you just keep scrolling because it makes you mad to have to comment or celebrate or acknowledge that person's growth or whatever they're sharing, again, it's time for self-reflection because being a girl's girl is about celebrating other women. And one thing that becomes easier and easier over time with having female relationships is the more that you love yourself, it's going to be so much easier to see the beauty in other people. When you can recognize that beauty in yourself, calling another woman pretty is nothing. It takes nothing for me to call another woman beautiful. It takes nothing for me to big up or celebrate or uplift another woman in my life because I know how much it means when I have that type of validation, that external validation, but also I know that when I am sharing praise or love towards another woman or bigging them up, it's because they are a direct reflection of me, in my opinion. So I look at women as being truly sacred. And so when you can see that beauty in other women, it's very easy to compliment other women. It's very easy to get along with them. And that doesn't mean that you're never going to get into, disputes or have issues with other women. We've all been there. I've definitely been there before. Okay. But what it all comes back to is having an inherent appreciation and respect for other women so that having and developing female friendships becomes easier and easier over time. Lastly, one thing that I think is the big kicker when it comes to being a girl's girl or not being a girl's girl is not inherently valuing romantic relationships over or in place of your platonic ones. And what I mean by that is, I think we all know one person who maybe has gotten into a relationship and they fall off the face of the earth. Baby, we don't hear them. We don't see them. The only time we do see them is with their significant other. We don't see them at the parties, the functions. They don't show up. They're gone. They're off the grid. And a lot of times those are the people, when they do get out of those relationships, sometimes they really struggle to develop their friendships because they have basically put all their friendships on the back burner and they struggle to create that bond with their platonic friends. Their friendships start to kind of wither and die. So having an inherent value of both your platonic and romantic relationships is important. And there's so many different ways to do this. I mean, we can get into that in another episode, but I really think it again comes down to inherently valuing the woman in your life and your female friendships and the female connections you do have. One thing that you could try to implement more is maybe doing more group hangouts so that you're not isolating yourself, or just you and your partner being isolated from your friend group. I think it's important for your friend group to kind of be integrated in some of your social outings when it comes to you and your partner. So what I mean by that is, it's actually pretty good for you to bring your friends around your significant other from time to time. Not saying every weekend, not saying every day, but from time to time, because again, if these people, these specifically these women are part of your village or part of your life, they should also know the person that you're spending time with. And they don't have to be best friends with them. Okay. They definitely don't have to be best friends with them. They don't need to hang out on their own. But what I'm really encouraged is that when you are in a serious, like, committed relationship or romantic partnership, I do think your friends should be part of that village that helps you grow, right? So definitely valuing your friendships and your female friendships, despite whatever your relationship status is key. Okay. So next, we're going to talk about healing from friendship trauma, because part of this, being a girl's girl and having girlfriends and basically trying to live out your insecure dreams or girlfriend's dreams or whatever your quintessential female friendship prototype is. For me, it's kind of a mix of living single, because I feel like those girls were very honest with each other, girlfriends for their diversity, but also insecure for their real life scenarios. But that's neither here nor there. But talking about friendship trauma, let's dive into, some of the elements of healing from friendship trauma. So we have a whole episode on this. This is actually in our season 1 series, but we talked about dealing with friendship breakups as well as making new friends as an adult. I went into detail, okay? That was a very, very vulnerable and detailed episode about friendship breakups. I went through multiple friendship breakups in my 20s, and my healing process kind of was different for each friendship that I had, every friendship breakup that I had. And of course, you can just go back to the episode. We will link it in the show notes. But essentially, my healing process for those friendship breakups was to not try to figure out what that person was up to, right? Depending on the severity of your friendship breakup, you might feel like, okay, I never want to see this person again. Or maybe that person is part of your extended friend group. So there's a possibility that you could run into them again, right? That's a different type of relationship dynamic where you will run into this person. So maybe instead of completely cutting them off, there is basically a detachment, right? That happens. So if you are interacting with them or you do see them, that it feels cordial, it feels emotionally somewhat safe, without it being like, oh my God, I can't go to this person's birthday because that girl's going to be there, or I can't go here because that person's going to be there. And then creating like an avoidance kind of behavior from that. I personally have been fortunate enough to not have to run into ex friends. Very rare that happens. So that's not something that is usually something I have to deal with. However, it has happened in the past. And one thing I will say is, don't follow up and try to check in on their social media and try to see how much worse they are without you. And oh my God, this bitch looks crazy now. Like, you don't need to do all of that, right? Like, I know that feeds the ego, trust me, but you really don't need to dive that deep into seeing what their life is now, especially if you're not involved in it anymore. And also, one thing that I had to practice and had my other friends practice is not bringing up that person unprovoked, right? So I don't want to hear what happened to so and so, what happened to you and so and so. When you're trying to heal from a friendship breakup, it kind of helps sometimes to quietly acknowledge it on your own, but not have to kind of reiterate and explain the situation over and over again, right? Because then that creates like this really it creates a lot of resistance in trying to heal and move forward from it. So not bringing them up unprovoked, maybe you hear a song and it reminds you of that person that you used to be friends with. you can just kind of acknowledge it and move on. It doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, this person loved this song, so now I gotta break down, I have to go into a whole thing about why we're not friends anymore and how they ruined our friendship. You can just kind of acknowledge it and keep it pushing. And one thing that is probably the hardest is also being able to kind of be mature about it, right? Like if that person is no longer friends with you, but you have friends or acquaintances who are cool with that person, you have to understand that it's really up to them to decide how they want to move forward. Sometimes when we are really when we have like a loyalty to someone, or maybe that person has a really good friendship with them, but they are not necessarily ready to just completely cut that person off just because you did. You have to kind of allow people to make those decisions on their own, right? If you've decided that you don't want to be around that person at all because they really really had you messed up, they disrespected you, they did something really foul, that's completely understandable. But if it was more of like an interpersonal, like just drifting apart, or like you guys had a tiff that really just never got resolved, you cannot force that person or the people in your other like social group or friend group to disassociate themselves from being friends with them. And that's something that you kind of just have to learn how to grow with. And it's a very difficult scenario sometimes. And I have definitely removed myself from environments or scenarios that I know would make me uncomfortable. And I am actually really grateful that I don't have that issue with my friend group. Again, I have a really good group of girlfriends, but I also think my friends respect me enough to not bring me into scenarios or situations or environments where they know someone, that might have caused me harm, is going to be there. So I'm really grateful that the friends that I have now would never put me in a situation like that. But sometimes that happens and you have to advocate for yourself. So that is the most important element of healing from that friendship trauma. Again, if you really want to understand how to heal from that friendship trauma, I urge you to go back to that episode and listen to it in depth, because really the outcome is being able to rewrite and redefine what your friendship needs and wants truly are. Lastly, I want to create space for us to make new friendships. So if this episode hit home so far and you're like, damn, I really am a girl's girl, but I just haven't met my friend group, I have some tips for you of making new friendships as an adult. I have made so many new friends as an adult, and contrary to popular belief, it's not that difficult to make new female friendships. I'm actually very selective of the types of relationships and friendships that I allow to grow in my life. I'm not necessarily a no new friends kind of person, but I am a very selective person when it comes to creating new friendships. But that doesn't change the fact that being a girl's girl means just being warm, open, and inviting to other women, no matter how deep or the level of familiarity you have with that friend, right? So the first thing is to be open minded. And one of the things that I think people overlook when trying to create new adult friendships is reconnecting with old childhood friends or strengthening those bonds, right? So maybe you met a friend or a friend of a friend at a dinner or party or whatever, and you really hit it off with them. You had a great vibe, but you guys never really had a chance to have one-on-one time. This is actually this is kind of like having a head start with the friendship, right? You can kind of just reference that, hey girl, like when we went to so and so's birthday party, I had such a great time, like I would love to get dinner with you or grab lunch or whatever. Kind of starting off from there, you already have a head start. It's a little bit less intimidating to create new friendships from there. And another way that you can go about creating new friendships is you need to get out the house. Okay, girl, I'm sorry to say this, but it's going to be really hard to make new friends if you don't leave your home. And I'm saying this as someone who actually sometimes deals with social anxiety, believe it or not. And going out to events by yourself, going out to meet new people, also, the more hobbies you have, the more likely you are to meet your own people. And I'm talking running clubs, swimming, crochet, biking, anime, music, art, photography. I guarantee you there's their class or a group for all of these hobbies and more, or all of these, some of them are professions. So definitely lean into your likes, your hobbies, the weird parts of you. You're going to find your people. The more authentic you are, the more you show up. And there are so many different organizations and spaces that are really designed to create opportunities for people to meet each other. So take advantage of those. And another easy and simple way of creating new friendship groups or creating new friends and bonds with people is to be intentional. So if you make plans with someone, especially a new friend or someone whose relationship you're trying to nurture and grow, be intentional. If you're going to make the plans, show up for them. Try to honor those plans. It's okay if sometimes things don't work out or you're not in the right headspace and you need to reschedule, but try to make the effort to show up, right? So if you're the person that created the plan or said, hey, let's do this on Saturday, and then Friday night rolls around and then you're like, actually, I'm not feeling it. Take the moment, take the 5 minutes it takes to text that person and say, hey, can we reschedule, rather than just the day arriving and then canceling 20 minutes beforehand, right? So being really intentional. I think adult friendships require, actually I was just talking about this with one of my friends, Jess, last night, but we were just talking about adult friendships and how they require a little bit more organization sometimes. And I think that's the element that people want to reject when it comes to creating new adult friendships. They're like, oh, I don't want to schedule something. I don't want to do this. I don't want to put this on the calendar. But truthfully, we're all busy. So we do need to have a little bit more organization and accountability so that we can actually have these plans come into fruition. And something else that we shared during our conversation was how adult friendships require more grace. They require a little bit more compassion, understanding, and that's really the elements that will create a long-lasting adult friendship. So I encourage you, if there's people in your job or there's people around you or people that you've kind of casually just maybe are interacting with, but you want to deepen those connections, sometimes you have to be vulnerable and take a chance and create that new bond and see where it goes from there. I think not putting too much pressure on yourself to have like a best friend come out of this, or if you're like really, really seeking friendships and you're just so eager, sometimes people can read that as you like maybe having like red flags and not wanting to pursue that relationship because it just feels like it's being rushed. Let it be organic. Let it take time. It doesn't have to be this manufactured thing. Allow the spaces and allow yourself to be in the space where you can receive friendships with open arms. And again, being a girl's girl is all about honoring and respecting other women in your life and having an appreciation, an admiration, I would say, for other women. And it's about valuing womanhood and sisterhood and girlhood. And although friendships do take a long time to heal, making new friends as an adult is possible. You just have to remember to stay open and intentional. So I hope that this episode has helped you to change your mind or perspective about female friendships and creating new friends as an adult. I know a lot of people struggle with this and creating new friends. When I moved to New York, I didn't know anybody. And literally within like 2 weeks of me moving here, I had a whole group of friends who some of them I'm still really close to this day. So I definitely encourage you to be open and stay soft, and we'll see you next week. To stay connected, join Sadie Baddies on Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, and more, and sign up for our monthly newsletter on SaddieBaddies.com to stay in the loop. Sending you hella love, and stay soft, baddie.